Welcome to the Traveling Owls and Orbridge webinar. My name is Shannon Burnett, and I am the Assistant Director with Alumni Programs in charge of the Traveling Owls portfolio. I'll be here to answer any Rice or Traveling Owls specific questions, but my hope is that you take advantage of Dan and listen to him about Orbridge and all of the trips that they're offering in 2021. Before I turn it over to him, though, I do have some friendly Zoom reminders. We are using the Zoom meeting format, so if you feel comfortable, we'd love for you to turn your video on. Although I will say you're welcome to turn it off while Dan presents and then turn it back on for the Q&A. Not a requirement though. We do ask that you keep your audio on mute unless you are speaking to cut out any background noise. Dan is going to give an overview of their program and the 2021 trips and then leave questions at the end. But if any questions pop up while he's presenting, you're welcome to put them in the chat and I'll make note of them so that we can loop back around at the end. And then when we do get to the Q&A portion after the presentation, you're welcome to take yourself off of mute and just ask them in more of a dialogue format. And now I'd like to introduce someone who I don't think needs too much of an introduction, Dan Stipa from Orbridge. He serves as the Director of Sales, and some of you may remember him for his over 8 years at Rice, where he worked in alumni relations and managed this Traveling Owls portfolio. Now with Orbridge for over a year, Dan manages over a third of partnerships that they have with alumni associations and nonprofit organizations throughout the East Coast, Southeast, Texas, and West Coast regions, and thankfully that includes Rice. He serves on Orbridge's senior leadership team and has been involved with program and strategy development as Orbridge has navigated through the disruptions that COVID crisis has caused, and Orbridge begins to restart travel. So Dan, take it away.
Thanks so much, Shannon. It's so great to see so many familiar faces and names, at least on here. I was telling some folks at the very beginning, I'm sorry and sad that the destination debut isn't in person this year, but hopefully sooner rather than later, we'll all have an opportunity to connect and visit in person again. And I hope everyone is staying well and healthy as we kind of are living in these strange times. If you would have asked me a year ago that this is what my role would have been when I left Rice and had been at Orbridge, I would have told you were crazy, but that's how life happens and we navigated through it together. So before I kind of dive into the 2021 programs, I talked with Shannon a little before this, I'm actually going to spend a few minutes talking about what travel looks like right now, because Orbridge is one of the first companies that we've actually started to have some tours operating again, some of our domestic programs. And so I thought to kind of set the stage as we start thinking about future travel, just wanted to share some kind of photos and what we're seeing. And so if you give me just 1 second, I'm going to share my screen and then pull up a slideshow. So here we go. So now you should be seeing a PowerPoint. Shannon, are y'all seeing that? Great. Okay. So Orbridge, since we've been around for about 15 or so years, and when we started, we were actually known for our domestic tours, which has served us really well during COVID, because some of the other operators who are all great, and I'm still friends with from my time at Rice, that have specialized in international tours or more esoteric programs, and that's kind of their bread and butter. It's taking them a little bit while to restart just by the nature of where they offer a lot of their tours, but that hasn't been the case for us. So we have started our domestic tour. So we have our national parks tours, our Southwest parks tours. And so I had the opportunity to join our very first one that was out in the middle of July. So I accompanied our very first tour that we offered since February to the national parks. And so a few photos that I kind of took to document what that experience looked like is I flew out of IAH, and you see if you haven't flown or kind of been on a trip yet, it does look and feel very different. And so I parked in the Eco Lot off of Will Clayton Parkway, and the shuttle bus that usually holds 16 would hold a maximum of 4 people. Flew out of Terminal E with United, and you see that literally there was no one there in the terminal with me. And I flew out at like 9 in the morning. So it's not like this was 5 o'clock in the morning or anything like that. So from the very beginning, this tour did feel different, and the whole travel experience felt different. And then once we got onto the tour, this tour typically would hold about 42 people, but we had 15, and that was a mixture of people deciding to transfer and postpone, as well as us incentivizing those, because we wanted to keep it at 15, to kind of move to later departures. And so moving forward, our tour sizes will be smaller, but we're still using these 55-person motor coaches. And so we have the checkerboard seating style with no more than about 18 individuals, including the tour director and other staff. And so you see that there's abundant social distancing. And then on the right-hand side, you see the photo in the hotel ballroom. I was talking to the banquet manager. This is where we did our welcome dinner the first night. And this room typically would hold anywhere from 100 to 125 people. But with the social distancing, having no more than 4 people per table, it was set up for 20 guests. And so all throughout the tours, you're going to start seeing much more social distancing to provide peace of mind, but also to help promote health and wellness. Once we actually got on the tour and started it, one of the expectations that Orbridge has, and I know that a lot of our competitors do, kind of just being in talks with them and looking at their websites, is kind of for the foreseeable future, face coverings are going to be the norm. And so you see when we were here at this archaeological site, all of our guests wearing tours, as well as the local guide who's standing on that wooden box off to the left-hand side of your screen. But then also what you're going to start seeing with Orbridge in particular are many more private experiences. So this museum typically opens at 10 in the morning. Our group, we arranged for us to arrive at 8:30, so we had an entire hour and a half to ourselves without anyone else at the museum. And so Orbridge is really prioritizing, we're calling it kind of a bubble, so to speak. We're doing all that we can to try to keep Orbridge travelers essentially isolated from the general public as much as we can. Obviously, that's not always possible, but we are trying to do that as much as we can. And so throughout 2021 on our different tours, you will see and experience firsthand kind of having more private access. And then on this next one, you'll see what these outdoor venues look like. So the picture on the left-hand side is when we were at the base of Mount Rushmore. So our tour director, I know a lot of you on this webinar have been on Traveling Owls trips, and there's the lectures and the educational components are really a hallmark of the Traveling Owls program and the Orbridge tours. And so rather than having those in hotel rooms or having them inside at meeting spaces, we're really doing all that we can when possible to have those types of experiences now be outdoors in fresh air where we can have a private area. So we reserved this little kind of seating area at the base of Mount Rushmore where our tour director gave his half-hour lecture. Still, as you can see, people wearing face masks, especially when social distancing isn't quite as possible. And then on the right-hand side of the screen, this is as we were walking through Yellowstone and looking at one of the sites that our tour director was pointing out to us. And you can see in the photo that we're really the only ones there. We're not in the midst of crowds, or aren't people pushing their way through us or anything like that. And so when I was talking with Kent, our tour director, he estimated that the crowds were about 40% of what they typically were. And so for those of you who are able and with proper precautions feel comfortable traveling in this next 6 to 9 months in particular, we really do think that not only are you going to have the same experience, we visited all the same sites that were on the itinerary, stayed at all the same properties. The only difference was that most of the time we felt really exclusive and kind of like VIPs throughout this entire experience. And so as you start to think about traveling, what you're going to see are these enhanced protocols. They're going to be here to stay: face covering, social distancing. And I will say that it really didn't impact the kind of the feel of the tour. I was admittedly a little nervous. Would that sense of community still be there? When you travel with the Traveling Owls or with other alumni associations, kind of that sense of community is hallmark of the travel experience. And so that even though folks did have to keep a little bit further apart than typical and wore those face coverings, there was still that strong sense of community there. There's not going to be nearly as much of the single serve products, so there are no more buffets. It's all now seated and plated meals, ordering from menus. The tour director and the guides aren't passing maps around on the bus for people to look at, or photos. You are going to now be seeing those on the screens on the motor coaches, or there's going to be one for every person. So anything that kind of got passed around in the old days prior to COVID, you're really not going to see that anymore. And that's really, as we shift into the future trends, that's going to continue. One of the key things that you will see, especially with Orbridge, and I know some of our competitors, is that increased flexibility. And so we've eliminated cancellation penalties if you cancel at least 90 days prior to the trip. And so there used to be a penalty if you canceled, starting at about 200 days, and then it progressively got larger. Now, for any new reservations as of July 1st, you not only have a 30-day grace period to cancel and get the full refund, but then up until 90 days, there's no penalty or fee. You instead get a refund for most of it and then a future travel credit. The sanitation protocols are here to stay. The closer to home experiences, we do think that those will come back first, even though we are actually getting some bookings for India from one of our universities who's offering that tour. But at the end of the day, travelers, we think, are going to, feeling safe and having that peace of mind is what's going to compel folks to travel. And so we're doing all that we can. We have those overarching protocols as well as tour specific ones. And so with that, I am going to shift into talking about the tours that we are offering in 2021 with the Traveling Owls. So give me 1 second while I shift to a different screen. All right, so we are proud to offer 7 tours officially as of now with the Traveling Owls, starting with our Antarctica program in January that's still on, all the way through Egypt in Q3. And so what I'm going to do is I have some slides for each of the tours. I'm going to go through them pretty quickly because there is a lot of detail and it's all online, and I don't really want to kind of bore you with going bullet by bullet. So we're going to start with our Antarctica program. And so this Antarctica program, the tour starts in Ushuaia, and then there's the cruise down to the Antarctic Peninsula, visiting the South Shetland Islands. So we are using the World Explorer, which is an all-suite cruise ship that holds 172 people. And so this experience, I know that some of you on here have been to Antarctica before with the Traveling Owls. And so this is one of those kind of bucket list destinations. And so this little video shows kind of the whales jumping kind of right next to the ship on our most recent departure earlier this year. And so some of these highlights, like I said, exploring the South Shetland Islands, the Antarctic Peninsula. The vessel that we are using is an Ice Class 1B, so it's really one of the top vessels to explore Antarctica. And then as you see here, again, I'm not going to read through all of these, but what I do want to say, and this will be the same for all of our tours, with Orbridge, all of your gratuities are included, and that's for the tour director, for wait staff, for your bag porterage, bus drivers, everything like that. So with Orbridge, all of that's included, as well as airport transfers if you arrive within the certain window of time. And we don't have just like a 1 or 2 hour window, but instead our transfer arrival time generally is about 6 hours. And so as long as you arrive within those 6 hours, your airport transfers are included as well. So that's across the board for all 7 of the tours that I'm talking about with you today. As well as shore excursions. And so on this program, you start at the Ushuaia Resort for a night, and you do have some free time on your own to do a little bit of sightseeing before embarking on the World Explorer. And so this is really one of the top vessels in Antarctica, like I said earlier, that is made for this specific environment and type of sailing. And it's really a luxury vessel. And so the staterooms are all suites that all have French balconies at minimum, but almost all of them do have a full balcony. And as you can see, really luxurious, the observation lounges, the dining areas, the common spaces. And then as well, some of the other areas, the library, the pool. One thing to note on all of our tours, like I said, we do have the COVID protocols. And so you won't be packed into these lecture theaters for like the welcome briefing or anything. They'll have staggered ones that are at different times based off of like your cabin number or whatnot. And so meals the same way. We will keep the same alumni associations together. So like Olive Rice, for example, would be in here, but we would have staggered meeting times and meals to kind of help prevent every seat being full and those types of things. And then with this tour, there is the optional Buenos Aires pre-tour for 2 nights at the Alvear Palace Hotel with the city tour, the special tango performance with the dinner. And then at the end of this tour, there's the optional Iguazu Falls tour. So this is also the optional, the post tour. So that's the very quick overview of Antarctica. And then the next tour that we're doing, and these are in chronological order. So the next tour that we're offering is our Journey Through Israel program. And so this program, what we really pride ourselves on with this one is obviously when you go to a place like Israel, you're expecting and you are interested in the religious history and the elements related to that spiritual element of it. But we also have infused a lot of cultural elements, natural wonder. So even if you might not be as particularly interested in the kind of the religious and spiritual element, there is still a wide variety of experiences built into this program. So with this tour, we visit Israel and the West Bank, and we have Israelis, Palestinians joining at different points throughout the tour to share their different perspectives. And in it, we're not shying away from anything. We really believe for all of our tours, in particular with destinations like Israel, that it's really important to kind of have that holistic experience, that holistic perspective where you as travelers are able to kind of make sense of it on your own in a way, where you're hearing from different individuals. There are times where you are visiting with local families, such as in Palestine when you go to the Tent of Nations, visiting the old city of Jerusalem. And so with this tour, in addition to all of these iconic wonders, there's a lot of people-to-people interaction built into this itinerary, joining you at meals, joining you on different excursions. And so from past tours that we've offered, that's oftentimes been one of the highlights in the feedback surveys, is being able to connect with the locals throughout this tour. And then, sorry, 1 second. Oh, there we go. And so with this one, it is that 9-night program with most of your meals included. Again, all of the excursions that are outlined are all provided. There's no excursion packages that you have to buy or anything. It's all included for you on the tour. And you're staying at some really iconic properties, starting with the Intercontinental David, staying at the Scots Hotel, which was built by the Church of Scotland back in 2004, and then also the Orient Jerusalem program. So on all of our tours, I know that some of you here have been on Orbridge tours. We really do take pride in the high level of accommodations, and when as much as possible, trying to provide kind of local, authentic experiences, and really as much as possible, trying to avoid like your cookie cutter hotels that the general tourist would stay at. And then with this tour, there is the optional post tour to Jordan as well, with 5 nights. And again, most of the meals included and all of the excursions. The highlight on this one is really having the time in the Dead Sea. And then moving on to our next one, this one's a bit closer to home. There's already a Traveling Owls guest who is booked on this tour. And so this is our Yosemite, Death Valley, and California Parks tour. And so this program, it visits 4 national parks in California and Nevada, including Death Valley. and also Yosemite, Sequoia, and Kings Canyon. And so with this program, we're not visiting when it's going to be 134 degrees, even though I think all of us in Houston kind of know what that feels like with this heat that we've been dealing with and the feels like temperatures, but you will not be there then. This tour is at the beginning of June when it's not quite as hot there in Death Valley. And so one of the highlights on this particular tour is the Mammoth Mountain Gondola, and then having extended time at Yosemite. And so on all of our national parks tours, this is the only one that we're officially offering with RICE in 2021. But we do bring park rangers on board for different experiences throughout the day and throughout the tour. And so in addition to our tour director for this program, who actually used to be a park ranger, you will have National Park Service staff joining throughout the experience that give a really in-depth perspective and lectures throughout. Again, all of your accommodations are included, as well as many of your meals and all of the admissions and park fees and everything like that. For this program, we're staying at properties that are right inside the parks or right at the base of them. So we're staying at the Inn at Death Valley, the Mammoth Mountain Inn, which is right at the base of the mountain and has a really phenomenal views and the kind of historic and quaint lobby lounge space. Staying at the Tenaya Lodge in Yosemite, and then ending at the Wakashi Lodge right at the base of Sequoia National Park. That's really the signature hotel there. With this program, there's also an optional post tour that's Monterey to Santa Barbara for 3 nights as well. Again, I know I'm going through these really fast, but I want to make sure that there's plenty of time for Q&A and all the in-depth details are online. And so our next tour is our polar bear and beluga whales. Oftentimes when people think of polar bears, you think of kind of a cold and snowy winter time up in northern Canada, but we have a summer version, the Animals of the Arctic Summer Program. And so we already have a RICE guest who's booked on this departure. And so with this visiting this area in the summer, you get to see the polar bears as well as the beluga whales amongst other wildlife. And so with this tour, we start in Winnipeg, and you fly into Winnipeg, and then after a night there, then you fly up to Churchill for 5 nights, and we stay at the Lazy Bear Lodge. And I'll show you some pictures. And so here's a short video of the flat bottom boat that you go on, and you sail out into the Hudson Bay. And those whales are kind of all around you throughout. And so this is really kind of an immersive wildlife experience. And so that happens when you are up there in Churchill. And so there are 2 separate water tours out on Hudson Bay. And then there's other days that you spend on the Arctic crawler. And I have a photo of it that I'll show you. In addition to the wildlife, you also do Churchill. I've been there twice now. It's such a super quaint little cozy town. There's a really good Inukshuk museum there as well. And so we spend some time there with some of the indigenous people to kind of hear from their perspective what it's like to be in Churchill. And there's only a few hundred that live there year round. And so the picture on the top left is the Arctic crawler. And so that back door kind of folds down, and there's a staircase that you go into, and it's heated. There's air conditioning, a restroom on board. And so when you are in the Arctic crawler is when you're going through the land and seeing the polar bears during this time of year. And then there's also, you may have seen it in the other slide beforehand, one of the evenings there is a dog sledding experience as well for those who want to take advantage of that. With this tour, you stay at the Inn at the Forks at the beginning. So this is right in the heart of the historic downtown area, a phenomenal hotel. There's a really cool, if you do sign up for this tour, since I've been on it a few times, there's a really cool restaurant right adjacent to this hotel that I would highly recommend. And then at the end, we do stay at the Hilton, only because most people have an early morning flight. And so it just makes it easier when we fly from Churchill back down to Winnipeg. We stay there just a couple minutes from the airport, and then it makes it really easy to fly out the next day. But then really the signature experience for this tour is the Lazy Bear Lodge. And so Wally Dodrick is the owner. He's been the owner. It's been in his family for generations. They've built this by hand, and all of these rooms have this cabin feel. It has all the amenities that you need: air, heat, hair dryers, full restrooms and everything like that. But obviously it's not a 5-star luxurious hotel or anything like that. But that's really the point of it. And so there's the on-site restaurant, the bar area. It's really honestly one of my favorite hotels that I've had the opportunity to experience. And so it really does kind of make the experience. And then there is the optional Winnipeg pre-tour on this program. And so for those of you who haven't been before, you do have that opportunity to fly in early for the optional pre-tour. And then we have our Northern Lights tour. And so there's already 10 Rice guests who are booked on the Northern Lights tour in September. And so this program, again, you start in Winnipeg on this program, but then quickly move up to Ganglers River, the lodge, where that is really the heart of the program. And so with this program, we rent out the Ganglers River Lodge exclusively for Orbridge for the really the month of September. And I always kind of joke, you can't guarantee natural phenomenons, but we almost all but guarantee that you will see the Northern Lights. We have never had a group go up there and not see the Northern Lights. And so obviously we know that almost everyone who goes on this tour, that's what they're going for. So rest assured, if you sign up, you are undoubtedly going to have that really special experience. And so there's full-day wildlife spotting excursions. You have the opportunity, if you want, to go fishing, to go kayaking, and all of that is included, and as well as a resident biologist, Dr. Brian Kodak, and some First Nation guides who accompany the group for most of the tour, who also are giving talks as well. And so with this program, as you can see, you have the one night in Winnipeg before you head up to Ganglers Lodge. And it's really kind of an area that when we had this tour run for a few years now, and it probably is one of our highest regarded tours in terms of the guest feedback. People really love it. You are kind of remote and desolate. Really, the only way to get up there is by the private flight. The Ganglers Lodge is about 200 miles from the nearest road. So with that being said, you're kind of off the grid, so to speak. So if you have important business deadlines or something during this tour, you might want to take advantage, or make sure you wrap those up before you get there, since you kind of are off the grid, so to speak. So again, you start here at the Grand Winnipeg, and then you continue almost directly up to Ganglers Lodge. And so, like I said, it's only 28 people total. It's individual cabins. There's a variety of different types of cabins. There are some that have 2 bedrooms, and then there are some that have just 1 bedroom. So if there's 2 couples who want to go, or maybe a couple and grandchildren or something, there are cabins that accommodate that. But you really aren't spending too much time in the cabins or the lodge. You're really kind of out in nature. And even at night, when the Northern Lights come, the way it works is that you can, there's a card that you can put on the front of your door. If you want to be woken up by the staff when the lights are visible, you turn it to the green side and they come around and knock and call in each of the rooms. Or if you've seen them enough and you want to have a good night's rest, you just flip it to red. So then that way they don't bother you when it's time to go out and see the lights. And then with this tour, there is the optional Winnipeg Post tour as well. Then we have our Galapagos Islands tour, and so this is our second to last one. This is in late October and then into early November. I've been on our Galapagos tour 3 times, and it is spectacular. And so with this tour, we charter the vessel, the Isabella II, and it's really a living laboratory. And so you have the opportunity to go kayaking, snorkeling, glass bottom boat riding, taking these nature hikes. And so you really getting up close and personal with all that this really important archaeological development has for us. And so with this tour, it starts out with a full day in Quito. And so in Quito, we have local residents who lead a a walking tour with us where we're visiting local markets, different places of religious significance. And then after that full day in Quito, the next day, we take an early morning flight to the Galapagos. And so once you're in the Galapagos, we visit the giant tortoise breeding center, Charles Darwin Center, and then we make our way to our home away from home for the 4 nights, the Isabella II, where every day, kind of the way this tour is structured once you get on board, the morning there are activities. So maybe one morning it's kayaking, then you come back on board for lunch, and then the boat moves a little bit further along, and then the afternoon there's another activity. So there's basically kind of 2 excursions per day, and there's always options. So you get to choose what you want to do. You're not just told kayaking today, but instead there's kayaking, glass bottom boat riding, as I said, all different things, and that is all included. And so with this tour, the meals, all those dinners on board do include the wine and beer. You have these special experiences where you're on the shore. One of the nights in particular, weather permitting, the crew will come out and kind of set up like a champagne and hors d'oeuvres reception. And so you're kind of there on the beaches and enjoying kind of a really special experience as the sun is setting before you make your way back to the boat to enjoy dinner and cocktails with your travel friends. So we start this tour at the Casa Gangotena, which is right in Quito's Spanish colonial Old Town. At the end, we do stay at the Wyndham. Again, this is one of those times where it's purely based off of convenience. Most people have really early morning flights, and especially to Houston, there's a direct United flight, at least there was in January. And so that flight is at 2 in the morning. And so that's why, especially for a lot of the Houston folks who do take that flight, it's really convenient to have this Wyndham hotel. It's literally about 2 minutes away from the airport. So you can at least get a few hours of sleep after dinner if you want to. But really, this tour, as again, the Galapagos are the highlight. And so you're on the 40-person Isabella II. I will note, though, the photos that you see here are as the boat looks right now, because we have opted not to do first quarter cruises to the Galapagos. It's actually going into dry dock earlier. And so everyone will be able to be on the boat once it's completely refreshed. So it's great as is. You see the stateroom and the lounge and the alfresco dining. But when you're on board, if you do sign up for this program, by October, it will be completely refreshed with all new furnishings, fixtures, and kind of have that cosmetic refresh so that it's even better than what it was or what it is currently. And then with this tour, there is the optional Mashpee Lodge pre-tour. And so this is 3 nights total, 2 of those nights being at the Mashpee Lodge up in the forest, with a wide variety of activities and field presentations that are available to guests. It's a really special experience. You kind of feel like you're up in the clouds, seeing all of these lush wildlife in the forest there. And then the post tour for our Galapagos tour is Machu Picchu. So this is a 5-night program, including a day room on departure day. And so with this, if folks want to hike, they have the ability to do that. There's also the Vista Dome train if folks don't want to kind of hike up to the top. But we make sure that depending on your kind of physical abilities, you still get to have a full and complete experience while at Machu Picchu. And then our last tour that we are offering together with the Traveling Owls next year is our Discovering Egypt and the Nile Valley tour. And so this tour, again, I've been on this one, and it really, the best way I can describe it is bringing the history books to life. So all of these things that I remembered learning about in college and in high school, really being able to see it and experience it firsthand was something that I will never forget. And so with this hotel or with this program, you are really, the local perspective, kind of like Israel that I talked about earlier, is what brings this program to life. Our tour director for this tour is a renowned Egyptologist who literally, you can walk into a McDonald's to get a cup of coffee and people there will know him. And so with this program, having that human people-to-people connection, like I said, brings it to life. And so you start with 2 full days in Cairo visiting the pyramid. There's the brand new Grand Egyptian Museum that will be open. And so we will spend time there before moving on to Luxor, where we visit the Karnak Temple, which is one of the largest religious buildings in the world. And then we continue on, and in Esna, we get on our private dahabeah, and I'll show some photos of it. But it's really basically a traditional Egyptian sailing vessel. And so it holds only 14 guests. And so we have 2 of them. And so this is a maximum of 28 guests. And so for 4 nights, you're sailing along the Nile River, and you feel like you're on a private yacht. It's really something else. Before ending and then flying back to Cairo. This is the only tour that there is a fee for an optional excursion if you want to go to Abu Simbel. And the only reason, in all transparency, that there is a fee for that is because it does require a flight. And so you're basically paying for the flight and the entrance fee there. I would say about half of the guests generally opt to do that, and then the other half stay back and enjoy their time at the resort that we stay at. And so with this program, again, all of your meals, or many of your meals, your accommodations are included, and then the internal airfare, aside from Abu Simbel, if you do want to take advantage of that optional excursion on the second to last day. So with this program, you stay at the Marriott Mena House, which is at the base of the pyramids. I actually took that photo that's on the left-hand side. It's kind of a U-shaped hotel. And so all of our rooms are at essentially the base of the U, where you have these stunning views of the pyramids. And then the Sofitel Winter Palace in Luxor, which is an old palace, the former winter residence of King Farouk, which is where we stayed there. And then as we continue on, here's the dahabeah. And so this is, again, a privately chartered sailing vessel that holds only 14 guests. The rooms either have the 2 twin beds or the one, but the twin beds can be pushed together. There's the traditional Egyptian cuisine. One of the evenings, it docks right up against the land embankment, and you kind of walk off board, and there's like a grill and a local dance performance that you get to enjoy. But I will say the thing that sets our Egypt program apart from some of the others that are out there is that it's timed so that our group never arrives anywhere that when there are other group tours, because we control the pace of it. When we stop, our tour goes in the opposite direction as a lot of other tours. And so while other groups are there kind of in the morning and you have thousands of people, as we pull up, a lot of those guests are leaving. And so you really kind of have that personal experience. And then you end at the Legend Cataract Hotel. Those pictures on the top of the slide actually do it no justice whatsoever. It's really such a luxurious hotel. And then you take a flight back up to Cairo. And then in Cairo, you stay at the hotel that is connected to the airport, because again, this is one of those programs just based off of the flight times. Most people have really early morning flights. And so it just makes it convenient that you can kind of walk through the terminal and you're right there. So it makes the departure day a lot smoother. For this tour, there is the Alexandria pre-tour for 3 nights before joining the group in Cairo, as well as the Jordan post-tour. And so the Jordan post-tour is often pretty well subscribed, because what we have found, and it makes sense, when folks are going to Egypt or Israel or those types of countries, while we certainly encourage and want folks to travel a lot and continue to go back and experience these places, oftentimes destinations like in Egypt might be a once-in-a-lifetime type of experience. And so that's why we have found that a lot of folks take advantage of the optional pre and post tours when they're visiting destinations like this in particular. And so that kind of wraps up the kind of the quick and dirty presentation of the 7 tours that we're offering. This is also a Rice group from a few years ago on our national parks tour at the base of Mount Rushmore. And so we're really proud of having been on both sides, both at Rice and at Orbridge. I know I say it with 100% sincerity that we really do value working with Rice, and all the the experiences that we're able to provide. And so that website that's at the bottom, rice.orbridge.com, is the co-branded website. So all of these tours that I've talked about today, if you go to that website, you're able to learn about all of them in great detail. And I know that Shannon has that linked as well on that Traveling Owls website. There is a special incentive. So anyone who books within the next few weeks, and typically it's 2 weeks, but since I have a particularly fond affinity for Rice and the Traveling Owls, it's not really 2 weeks, but if you book within the next maybe 2 to 3 to 4 weeks or so, you can sign up online, and there's a section on the reservation form that says like additional information or notes or something like that. If you just put in like destination debut, you'll get $125 off. So like, it should be 2 weeks, but if you do it within the next month or so, you'll get that, and that'll just be deducted off of your final invoice. So again, just put in destination debut in the other field, and that will get you that discount. And so that wraps up my presentation, so to speak. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, so then that way we're able to see everyone. So give me just one moment to stop the share. And now we should be able to see kind of the Brady Bunch family version of this. And so with that, I will kind of open it up to Shannon. And I do see that there are some questions, or one question from Martial: what are the hotel situations like? Martial, I'm happy to, do you want to elaborate just a little bit? I want to make sure I answer your question appropriately.
Sure. You were giving us an update on what traveling right now is like and all the precautions that you're taking. Mm-hmm. What kind of precautions are going on in the actual hotels?
Great questions. Yeah, thanks for clarifying.
Thank you.
So, yeah, definitely. So it varies. At the domestic hotels, for our national parks, Southwest Parks tours, similar to what you would expect. So face coverings are required in the lobby areas. What we do is we actually buy the hotel for an additional night before our groups arrive, so that there's no one in your room for 24 hours prior to your arrival. There's the enhanced sanitation and cleaning processes that are in place. I will say the one thing that I noticed, and kind of moving forward, I think for the next few months in particular, is that there won't be regular housekeeping, because they're really trying to minimize the number of people going into hotel rooms. You can certainly request it, and I did one time on the National Parks tour, because I had stuff get pretty sandy and dirty. So they came in and cleaned without any issue or concern whatsoever. But that was something that I noticed, is that there isn't the every morning when you leave, the housekeeping coming through. So those are the main things. In terms of international, it really varies. So for Egypt, for example, what we're hearing from our on-the-ground supplier is that probably for the next year, there will be kind of a temperature check when you walk into the hotel. And so I think that that will be something that, especially as Europe and other international destinations open up to US tourists more and more, I think you'll see more of that, just as a precaution, even though one might argue the validity or what that actually tells you, but I do think that you'll see that. So in a nutshell, those are kind of some of the differences that I've seen and I'm aware of with hotels as of now. I will say with what I just said, there's an asterisk to everything, because we all know that COVID is so rapidly changing that what I'm talking about now very well could be different in a week from now, in a month from now, in 8 months from now. We do have a new wellness website on the Orbridge site. It's orbridge.com/wellness. And that's where we list all of our overarching protocols. So everything having to do with the face coverings, social distancing, hand sanitizers, that type of stuff that's in place for every tour. But then for each in particular tour, once you sign up, you also receive in-depth tour-specific protocols. And so that will detail, because obviously Egypt will have very different protocols and feel different than Yosemite or Death Valley. And so those are available, will be made available. And then also those are provided again with a final payment, with your final payment reminder. So then that way, if anything changes between when you signed up and when you make final payment, you're aware of those. You're made aware of those before you decide whether or not you want to make final payment. And then about 2 weeks prior to departure, we also share protocols in case there were any changes as well. But all of those, I know a lot of you have traveled with Orbridge and have worked with Sam or Simon before. They're always available when you pick up the phone or shoot them an email, that if you have any questions about that particular tour, they're happy to help. Along those lines, I will say that Orbridge is weathering the COVID storm very well. We haven't had anyone in terms of staff reductions and any front-facing roles. I'm working still full-time, 5 days a week, full salary. So Orbridge, because, and I really do attribute it to having such a kind of wide breadth of trips and experiences that we offer, we've really been able to weather this storm well. So hopefully we kind of all as a travel industry kind of bounce back, but I will just say kind of for peace of mind's sake that if you do decide to sign up, I don't lose sleep at all about company or job security. I lose sleep about just wanting people to get out and start exploring the world again. So that was a very long answer, Martial. I'm sorry, you asked about a hotel and I went on about the what I lose sleep about. So, but hopefully.
No, that was great. Thank you.
Question. Yeah, Linda.
Oh, speaking of the hotels, I'm kind of assuming that hotels aren't full these days. I don't know that for sure, but in general, are they, like you showed us one place where you specifically pointed out how the dining was going to be spread out and 4 people to a table and so on. Are most of the hotels operating in that way? Like if you go down for breakfast, you're not going to run into a room full of hundreds of people or?
Definitely. Yeah. Great question, Linda. So breakfasts tend to be, you either pre-order it and it's ready for you when you get there and it's kind of at staggered times. So like on our national parks tour, for example, you got to sign up for a meal time between 6 a.m. and 9:30. So then that way, not everyone was kind of rushing down right before the buses left or anything like that. There's no buffets anymore. So it's like pre-plated or you order off of a menu. But then for the other meals as well, yeah, the same thing. Even in the lobbies themselves, they've removed furniture from it so that you can't kind of have 50 people sitting in the lobby and to kind of promote social distancing. But yeah, in particular with the meals, we have worked with all of our hotels, all of the restaurants, if we're not having a meal at a hotel, that there's no more than 4 people together. And on the first night of the program, we ask people if they're traveling with other couples or something like that. So if you were traveling with someone else that you knew, we could make sure that throughout the tour, if you were interested, that you and Susie had the seats together or something. So we're really taking that seriously. Hey, Earl, good to see you.
Oh, just a comment. Sometimes on a trip like this, you get more than you expected. When I was in Antarctica a number of years ago, one day we were in the Zodiacs out among the icebergs and humpbacks, and one of the humpbacks decided to go under our Zodiac. And we were all saying very nice things about him until he finally came out on the other side without getting us wet.
That's awesome. That's great. I remember from the Traveling Owls 50th anniversary video, still one of my favorite points in it is you with a picture of you in Antarctica a while back with the more current one. So that's a great memory to share, Earl.
Oh, Dan?
Yes, Wanda.
I'll start my video. So David and I are interested in going to Egypt.
Yes.
Do you know if they're very vigilant about wearing face masks? And is there any way that, for example, when we're at a restaurant and if I know it's in a year actually, but if the waiters, the wait staff aren't wearing face mask, if the tour director can maybe say something like, hey, can you guys wear a face mask?
Yeah. Yes. So Yeah, as you said, it's over a year away. As of right now, yes, all of the wait staff. And so we, with all of our tours, whether it's Egypt, national parks, Antarctica, we are requiring any hotel, any restaurant that we visit, any staff that interact with us, that they're all wearing face coverings. They are, and the tour director, even on the national parks tour, there was one hotel that we got to and the baggage handlers were not wearing their masks. The tour director did not let us get out of the bus until he went and talked with the manager, and then other bellmen came out who were wearing masks and gloves. And so that is something that we are taking really seriously. So I would not worry at all about that there will be, that the staff, the tour director, waiters, waitresses, busboys, buswomen, they will all be wearing those face coverings. At least as of now, who knows what it'll be necessarily on October 28th of 2021, but for the foreseeable future, yes, definitely they'll be wearing those face coverings.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, definitely. Are there any other questions or comments? Or I would love to know also, if there's no questions, Shannon, I know that this is a little off script, but either if you want to say it out loud or put in the chat box, like just what you're excited about in terms of travel restarting. Is there a particular destination? Is there just kind of getting away from home again? Would love to kind of hear where you want to go, what you're excited about as you kind of start thinking about travel restarting. Yeah, Linda.
Specifically interested in the Galapagos tour.
Great.
And you know, some of the other ones sound great too. I've got a question about the polar bears in July.
Yeah.
What kind of temperatures do you experience up there in July?
So when I was there 2 Julys ago, it was like mid to upper 60s, but I will say when you were on the water, it did get cold. And so that's why in that short little kind of video clip that was on that one slide, you saw a lot of people kind of in what looked like parkas. Those are provided if people want them. I didn't need that level of like warmth protection or whatever you want to call it. But it's definitely comfortable and not like cold or anything. But for some people who might have a little bit lower tolerance, there's heavier gear that you can wear while you're up there.
So I put Dan's question in the chat, but you're welcome to take yourselves off mute and share what you're most excited about.
Egypt, great. Wanda, David, I would be happy to go out for drinks and I'll tell you all about this tour. I have tons of photos from it. It literally, aside from, I would argue that Tanzania and Australia, New Zealand are kind of my top 3, and I loved our Egypt tour. So
You're on. You're on.
there we go. Definitely. And anyone else on the call who wants to join and talk about Egypt or polar bears or Galapagos, you know how to get a hold of me. And my email, it was on one of the early slides, but in case you don't have my Orbridge email, it's just my first initial and last name. So dstipa@orbridge.com. So don't hesitate to shoot me an email at any point, whether it's obviously Shannon is a phenomenal resource for all things traveling owls, but in particular, if you have questions about any of our tours or anything like that, even if it's not one that we're officially offering, don't hesitate to let me know. So just dstipa@orbridge.com. Marteal Wildlife, yeah, not surprised by that, Marteal.
Dan, Shannon, well, it's Martha and Dick. We are veterans of Orbridge on the Alaska trip, and it was a terrific trip. It was absolutely wonderful 2 years ago. We are signed up for Northern Lights, and we've just been in contact recently with the company about postponing it until next year, and we're ready to go. We just want to go somewhere.
Yeah. Yep, I totally agree. That's why when my boss when my boss asked if I would be willing to join our national parks tour, I had no hesitation with saying, yes, sign me up.
Yeah, today we went out to George Bush Park. That was very exciting.
Dan, do you have it's BM Greg Benish, do you have any idea how warm it will be in the the California national parks in June.
Mhm.
I know I'm not 105, but 95.
Great question. So last year was our first year offering that tour, and I will check and I'll circle back with you. I want to say that it was like in the low 80s. So it was tolerable. It was still warm, but it wasn't necessarily like unbearable. But I will circle back with you or with Shannon to relay that information to you just to double confirm that.
Maybe I better take a closer look at that polar bear one.
Yeah.
I know we had a really warm summer in Chicago area with temperatures. Now I know you in Houston just don't even bat an eye to this, but 31 days over 90. And I know that I had a hard time with the face mask thing in that hot heat humidity. Yeah.
I will confirm that, and I'll circle back with you either directly or through Shannon.
Thanks.
While you're checking temperatures, what are the temperatures in Egypt in November?
I was there at basically the same exact time, and it was like upper 80s most of the time. But wasn't too bad. I will say that the one time that it did get really hot and was at the second to last day when we were staying at the Cataract Hotel in Aswan before you fly back up to Cairo, because that's the furthest south place on the itinerary. That day was warm. It was probably mid to upper 90s. But other than that, I was comfortable in like shorts, flip flops, and a polo or a t-shirt most of the time without like feeling that I was getting like drenched in sweat or anything like that.
We just came back from Arches and it was 105. So
yeah, so it'll feel cool for you in Egypt there. But I will say with the Egypt one, even on those warm days, it's so nice. You walk back onto your private dahabia, they're waiting with wine or juices for you. And so as you sailed down the Nile after a warm day, kind of sipping your cocktails, it really does make for a special experience. I'll show you some photos of that.
Looking forward to it.
So I have a question regarding kind of mobility limitations, and yes, it's in particular with the polar bear trip. Yeah, that would be one. There are a few steps that lead into the Lazy Bear Lodge, and then there are, I want to say, probably about 8 steps that go up to when you have to kind of essentially climb into the Arctic crawler. But aside from that, those are the only stairs that I can remember. Obviously, you're sitting on that Arctic crawler, and it is a little bumpy just based off of the topography of where you're traveling through. Nothing too strenuous. There is that flat bottom boat ride, but again, you kind of board it on a flat, even surface. Depending on the water of the Hudson Bay, when you're there in particular, it can be a little choppy, but when I was up there, it wasn't too bad. So overall, it really wouldn't be too big of a hindrance whatsoever, but I would be happy to talk more about it. And then also Sam manages that program, and so Sam has been up there as well. So he's our guest services manager for that program that I would be happy to connect you with if you wanted as well. Any other questions or? Again, remember, if you do sign up, so just kind of in addition to having that $125 discount, if you sign up in the next 2-ish weeks, there is a 30-day grace period. So if you sign up and then if you start looking at flights preliminarily or looking at travel insurance and realize, oh, this might not really be something that I can or want to do anymore, if you cancel within the first 30 days, you get all of your deposit back. So there's no fee whatsoever if you do book in the first 30, or if you cancel 30 days within making your deposit. And then at that point, until 90 days prior to departure, there's no penalty. So the deposit for all of our programs is $850. If you cancel basically 31 days after reservation, so assuming you don't cancel during the grace period, if you cancel 31 days up until 90 days prior to departure, you get a $500 refund, and then that $350 is a future travel credit that can be used for 2 calendar years after your scheduled tour. So I'm going to pick on Wanda and David. So if you signed up for Egypt, that is supposed to happen in October, if you decided 100 days prior to departure that you don't want to go anymore, you would each get back $500, and then you would each have a $350 travel credit that would be valid through the end of December 2023. So 2 calendar years after the tour. So basically, any of our 2021 tours, if you cancel at least 90 days in advance, you'll have $350 travel credit through the end of 2023, and then the $500 cash refund. So you're not really out any money if you cancel 90 days or more prior to departure. So hopefully between that, the discount, if you are interested in traveling, and I will say that we have been getting new bookings in by the day, which has been really great to see, that people are kind of getting more excited and they want something to look forward to and something to plan for. So hopefully one of these tours, or any of the other ones that the Traveling Owls are offering, but selfishly, hopefully it's an Orbridge tour. Hopefully one of these resonate and that you might consider joining us in 2021. And there still is, we still do have a few cabins left on the Antarctica program. So if that's something that is of interest to you and wanting to get away sooner rather than later, because it's a small ship, it is able to operate. And so we have every intention of operating our Antarctica cruise in the end of February or the end of January.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank Dan for seamlessly providing a great description of those 7 trips, probably the hardest job of all the tour operators to do that. So thank you so much. And then for providing thoughtful answers and also giving us a peek into what travel looks like during COVID times. If you guys have any additional questions, like Dan mentioned, there is the co-branded website, so rice.orbridge.com. And it's also linked out on our Traveling Owls website. You're also welcome to email Dan directly, like he mentioned, or email travelingowls@rice.edu. Some way we will make sure we get you an answer. I want to thank all of you guys for spending your evening with us, and I hope to see you guys soon. Give me a call, give me an email. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks.
It was great to see so many of you.